Howdy, folks. I'm Jeff Gonzales, former Navy SEAL, president of Trident Concepts, and host of the Bulletproof Workshop, powered by AR15.com, where we discuss knowledge, skills, and ability to help bulletproof your everyday performance in whatever your field. Welcome to Podcast 011. My next guest leads one of the most successful companies within the firearms industries. Magpul introduced the original Magpul 5.56 in 1999. I was still on active duty.
Same.
Yeah, that's true. Since then, they have added numerous products to their success as they continue to innovate. From his time as a fighter pilot to business executive, he has been a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. He's a father, Marine, ejection seat survivor, business executive, and motocross champion. Please welcome to the show, Duane Liptak. How's it going, Duane?
Outstanding. Let's not overstate the motocross success because, yeah.
Oh, we're going to get into that. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time to come on the show. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this one. I've been telling Paul, I'm like, yeah, I can't wait for this one. We've had some great guests, but this was one that I was really looking forward to.
Yes, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's take a moment. Speaking of time, take a moment to thank our sponsors. Folks, this show is sponsored by 1776 Insurance. We're talking about comprehensive firearms collection coverage. That also includes your accessories as well as knives. If you've got questions or you want to learn more, please visit 1776insurance.com. Oh, okay. So we're back. It's great to have you on the show. I like to start off all of our shows with kind of getting to know the guest a little bit more than I know you. I've known you for a really long time, but that's not to say that I know you. So where'd you grow up and what was your childhood like?
All right. So I grew up in a very, very small town called Weedville, Pennsylvania, population of about 500.
Wow.
Like the nearest stoplight was 6 miles away, and the closest one after that was 14 more, right? So it's
wow.
It's a very, very small town. If you look on a map of Pennsylvania, there's a big green area in the western north central mountains, and I'm in the middle of that.
Wow.
But so grew up small town. Certainly hunting, fishing, shooting, trapping, the whole thing is part of the kind of lifestyle there, still is to this day. Very big kind of outdoors area. And so I grew up in that environment, and that shaped kind of a lot of what I did and what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I guess.
And it's funny because, I shouldn't say it's funny, but it's interesting because, well, one of the reasons why I like to kind of get to that question is it helps to kind of set a tone for like where you are currently and what you've done throughout your life and how that childhood influenced you throughout your life. And I see that in a lot of other people as well. Like their childhood was, had a strong impact in choices that they made and the direction that they took in life. So you grow up small town USA, hunting, fishing, outdoors life, basically. I imagine there was perhaps a rebellious streak in you at that time?
So there's a streak that goes through me that's somewhat rebellious or foolhardy, depending on how you want to look at it, right? So if they looked at things the same way back then as they did now, I would probably be off the spectrum on ADHD, right?
For sure. Oh God.
So that just turned up as like unsatisfactory conduct on my elementary school report cards back then, right? So it was just. Your kid's rambunctious or hyperactive or
can't
whatever.
Sit still?
Yeah, can't sit still.
Oh, man.
But that's honestly, ADHD is my superpower.
100%.
So it's actually been extremely helpful as long as you can learn to focus those periods of that hyper focus. Right?
Yes.
You can get a lot done there, and then when you chase the squirrels, it's not as bad.
So I love hearing this because I had a very similar kind of diagnosis in school, like there are moments of brilliance and they're surrounded by destruction. Yeah. and go on missing. Like I would hide in closets. I would just escape the room and do things as a kid. And I remember I couldn't, like, sitting in a chair was torture for me. Just like sitting in this chair for as long. I'm obviously older, more mature. I can hide the uneasiness a little bit better, but it was tough. Like I found it to be really difficult, and I had a lot of the learning difficulties associated with ADHD. Now we know kind of a little bit more about them, but it was funny because it took me a while to figure out how to focus that ADHD into that kind of like sharpened edge as opposed to a blunt instrument. But man, once I did, I had the same kind of outcome. Very focused, very task oriented. Was able to accomplish things with I wouldn't say with ease, but man, I would blow through things so much when I had that hyper focus. But boy, man, And I wish I had it on demand. Like I wish I could snap my fingers and just be boom right in that hyper focus. But it just kind of ebbs and flows.
For sure.
And when I'm in it, and I'm like, okay, I got to go do shit. I got to get stuff done right now. This is the time to do it.
Yep.
It's never the same either. So that's good to hear that you had a similar kind of thing. And so as you say, your superpower, were you successful in school? Did you struggle in school as well? Or
I was extremely successful in school. Like
Interesting.
I figured out what really saved me is they had a gifted and talented program like in my school, and taking me out of the classroom environment for that amount of time in a day allowed me to get that whatever else was out of my system, right?
Interesting. So they were able to channel that and then put you back in. That's kind of like I grew up in a school, or my school, weird school, elementary. I guess it was a science project, maybe an experiment is a better way to call it, but it was open classrooms. So there was no classroom. You had corners of these large areas. There were a few load-bearing walls that had giant portals through them, and you could look over and see the classroom there, the classroom behind you, classroom to the side of you, and so wow. my distraction vision, not a good environment for Jeff. But when I did get into those smaller environments, like in an actual room, a classroom, I did kind of I wouldn't call it special programs, but they were more remedial type programs to help me try. But I did have a level of concentration in those rooms as opposed to in that open classroom format. So funny, I just remember that. I was like, oh my God, I did not have that luck. Not at all. Not at all. I could not keep still in those classes. All right, so our school was successful for you, and that's great. Did the schooling kind of help push you in the next direction of your phase of life, or what did you kind of like? Did you always know that you wanted to go to college, or was it something that
I knew that it was expected? Kind of.
Yes, expected. Were you the first in your family to go?
I was not. My mother was an RN, so she had done nursing school and the whole deal.
I gotcha.
So,
okay.
But other than that would have been.
You would have been it. Yeah. There was expectations. Yeah, interesting.
And that kind of did. I knew that at some point there was going to be college, but from the time I was like 8 or 10 years old, I wanted to be a United States Marine Corps sniper, right?
Interesting.
Which is a weird thing for a kid to latch onto, but
what do you think caused that? Did you see? Was there a movie, an influence, an uncle, somebody that kind of like?
So the Carlos Hathcock book, right?
Oh yes.
So that there, and also just I had the hyper focus got applied to firearms from a very early age for me, right?
Interesting.
So I started shooting at 4, about the same time I figured out how to read, and then off we go to the races with that, and I loved it, just absolutely loved it. And so by the time I was 12, my dad was teaching me how to do some basic gunsmithing stuff. I took off with that and just totally immersed myself, did a ton of reading. By the time I was 17, I had my first paid job as a gunsmith.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so at a local shooting range there. I was a shooting instructor and a gunsmith at 17 years old.
Holy cow.
And a USPSA competitor. But.
Oh, interesting. Wow. So, yeah, you bloomed early.
Probably burn out early, too.
Oh, well, maybe so. Wow, that's pretty cool that you were already like legitimately gunsmithing you were still a teenager basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Did you go to formal schooling or did it was OJT?
OJT, figured it out, some apprenticeship type stuff and learning.
Well, back then, I don't know if there was even.
Wasn't really an opportunity, certainly not for a high school student to attend.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I think I don't think there's a school out near you. I think they're all on the western side of the country, like Arizona, Colorado. If I'm not mistaken, is where the two big ones are.
Trinidad there.
Yeah, so
I was a voracious reader, and that actually was really what helped me. So like the entire Brownhouse Gunsmith Kink series, as well as every other book I could get a hand on that basically had anything to do with firearms, I was devouring, and that's another pattern that goes through my entire life. So learning in general and picking up hobbies. So I collect hobbies.
Yes. Interesting way to put that. Okay. Collection of hobbies. That's good.
Which is and they've been all over the place.
Give me some examples of hobbies.
So everything from exploration level cave diving to bookbinding, right? And everything in between, which is about as diametrically opposed as you can get, right?
Wow. Cave diving. That was a hobby?
Well, it's just one of those things that I got hyper focused on for a good period of time.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like that is both good and bad for me. because I become obsessive.
Same.
I love it.
Badly.
Yes, like I eat and breathe around the subject, and it like to pull me off of those. Like it's ruined relationships. It's ruined friendships. It's definitely it affected promotions and all sorts of stuff because I would just be so rabidly focused on something, nothing else existed. So I'm right there with you, brother. Right on.
And I don't know, some of that is like, as talking through some of the TBI treatment and things like that, where it's potentially a dopamine system failure, right?
Yes.
And it's from a very young age, like I realized that I needed a little extra stimulation and that kind of rewards feeling, which helped drive me to try and receive accolades for whatever I was doing, or that sense of accomplishment internally. Right. And so all these different activities, I wanted to achieve a certain level of mastery to get that dopamine hit. Right.
I could not. Recently, dopamine to me was a mystery until about 2 or 3 years ago. And when I started researching it, I was like all of a sudden, all the dots started to line up. I started connecting these dots. I was like, oh my God, I get why I did certain things. Like I couldn't explain it to people why I had that kind of urge or need or whatever it was. It just was there. And now, now I have a better understanding of it. And that puts me more in like the driver's seat. Now I can understand how to use it and exploit it to my advantage. And, it's been, I guess it's been kind of like a little weight off my shoulders that, okay, now I know. Now I have an understanding because nobody could help me understand any of that. I mean, everybody was like, either they were like completely had no answer whatsoever, or they were just bullshitting me.
Yep. That's the same thing. Mine
cereal.
Was
you're eating too much cereal. Stop eating all the Frosted Flakes. They're killing you.
That's it. It was like 2 years ago that somebody was actually talking to a doctor, and he's like, "Wow, you definitely have some, your dopamine system's all jacked up, and it's probably what's going on and driving some of these decisions throughout your life." I'm like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense."
You hear that, Mom and Dad? Wasn't always me.
Yep. There's biological kind of sources at work.
But it's interesting because there's been so much release of the research on dopamine and what it does to our body, and particularly with TBI stuff. I think like that has been a huge revelation and in some cases relief for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Just being able to understand that, because now we have the tools to actually I wouldn't say activate the dopamine, but we have a better chance of actually getting that dopamine hit that we're looking for. So
and understanding why you're feeling what you're feeling when you're without it. Right?
Oh my God, yes. And that was tough because I mean I would seriously I would get that itch or edge of on myself, and like if I couldn't scratch it, it would just get worse.
Yep,
worse and
absolutely.
worse and
And
worse.
there's a pattern of risk-taking behavior.
Ooh, really? Wow, maybe that explains some of my behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Which also leads to why I'm sitting here with 7 broken ribs and a recently collapsed lung, right?
Oh boy, I cannot wait to get to that. That's going to be good. So risk-taking. Let's go back. Okay, so you're gunsmithing at 17 years old, and you're looking at your future, and so you chose to go down the college road, whether it was intentional or you felt to go there was the right choice. You did. You went to college. What did you do in college? What did you study? What was your major?
Well, my major was administration of justice, but we'll back up a little bit to get to that point, right?
Excellent.
So, throughout life, did the whole, all this kind of the dopamine fix stuff. So climbing, dry caving, the whole stuff. I was scared to death of heights as a kid, decided I needed to learn to climb to solve that problem, right? So here I am jumping off of railroad trestles, free rappelled, 300 feet, as 14-year-old
No supervision
kid.
either.
None whatsoever.
Oh yeah, I fucking love it. Yes.
Come back to the house by dinner, right?
Oh, I love it, man.
So this level of kind of decision making, I ended up in a car accident when I was 16 years old, right? And so not necessarily speeding excessively, but it was wet, right? So I was going definitely too fast for conditions. I was seriously injured. So my left calf was severed, broke my tib fib, broke my left humerus, requiring a rod, basically from my elbow to my shoulder, tore the bottom of my left ear off, big avulsions on my back, whatever. So really jacked up.
That does sound like a pretty bad accident.
So it's lucky to survive, whatever. And this is another pattern throughout my life. God protects fools and children, and I was definitely an idiot, and still am.
I acknowledge that. I definitely do. And thank you for everybody who still loves me. Thank you for everybody that still associates with me.
Same.
Yeah.
My wife. Oh gosh.
Angels in the mist, I tell you. Yes.
So anyway, while I'm laying in a hospital bed, kind of recovering from this whole thing, there's certain things going through my mind, and one, they told me I'd never run again, or extremely unlikely that I'd ever be able to run again, and things like that. My left leg is a little bit shorter than my right, whatever. But anyway, I made a determination in my mind that certainly that same drive that had gotten me, up to that point was what I was going to use to get me through that, and I wasn't going to let any of this or anything else in life stop me, right? So an interesting moment that kind of changed my mindset just towards everything. So after that, obviously recovered, got better, did the whole thing. I still wanted to do the military service thing. Obviously, I've got a rod in my arm now, which was disqualifying for military service, which was not a great thing. So talked to recruiters as soon as I turned 17. And though I was planning on going to college, I wanted to potentially do reserve time and then, pick up a commission afterwards or something, right? Yeah. Or ROTC, whatever. I still wanted to serve, still wanted to do that, or straight up enlist. I was still struggling with that decision in my mind. But they wouldn't even talk to me, right, because of the rod in my arm. And at 18, same thing. So it was like, okay, I have to figure out what I want to do. And the closest analog to the military service was law enforcement.
For sure.
So,
absolutely.
I graduated high school with a 4.11 weighted GPA or something like that, whatever.
Good job, overachiever.
but here I am, instead of going into a technical field or whatever, I'm administration of justice because I wanted to go into law enforcement.
Makes sense.
So law enforcement was what I studied. I did an internship with University Park Police Department. We had an academy and the whole deal, and we worked for them for the last 2 years of my school, doing the full spectrum, everything from work in crime scenes to prisoner processing to working
kind of like as an intern,
playing close. Yeah, it was a great program. So got a ton of exposure there, and then I wrote my thesis on citizen interactions in community policing versus motorized patrols, which was published as part of a larger study. But and that was
I was published. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Sorry, I didn't mean it to come off that way. But
I'm just kidding. That's a huge accomplishment, especially since it wasn't necessarily an intention. It was just like you just did the good work, and then other people recognized that, and it became part of a larger landscape.
Yeah, it got picked up. It was published as part of a larger study. It wasn't like I got published by myself, right? But that citizen interaction piece got picked up. So as I get towards the end of my my college career, I still have not. Law enforcement may not scratch the itch that I wanted. And I was like, I still really want to try this Marine thing. And so I started talking to the OSO at Penn State there. And so they were very supportive and said, hey, we can get you a waiver. I know we can get you a waiver. I was,
cool.
knocking out a 290 plus PFT. So we can get you a waiver. So I apply for the program. They had me take the ASTB, which this comes into play a little later. So that's the Aviation Standardized Test Battery. It qualifies you to be a pilot, right?
Okay.
I didn't want to be a pilot. I want to be an infantry officer. Okay. But I took the test because they said it'll look better as on my application.
Sure, I get it. Yeah,
given the fact that I needed
broader
a waiver.
measurements.
Yeah. So I did that. And I was accepted into the PLC program, but I needed to get my medical waiver. And they said, no problem, you're a shoo-in for the waiver. So I'm all the way up to like 3 weeks away from getting ready to head off to OCS, and the waiver comes back denied.
What?
So this was my plan, right? And so that and I hadn't started kind of the law enforcement application process. And so that now I'm kind of left holding the bag. I put all my eggs in that basket because everybody said it was a done deal, and there's no way it's not going to go through. But however, and this is one of those things where Providence shows up, right? Which potentially was actually the right thing at the time.
Okay.
As some other things happen that work out. So I started applying to various law enforcement agencies, everything from liquor control, which I really didn't want to do, but I needed to pay the bills, right?
For sure.
But Pennsylvania State Police, local municipal departments, the whole thing, did all the application stuff. And I still needed to make a living, right?
Right.
So
how old were you at this point?
So 21, 22.
Okay. Wow.
So figuring that out, and so I did some odd jobs cutting trees and things like that. My dad had a tree trimming business, so I learned how to run a chainsaw. Another skill to add to the bucket, right?
For sure.
So I did some of that, and I ended up getting a job as the roadmaster and municipal manager assistant for Jay Township, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up in that little tiny small town. So I'm driving a plow truck and fixing roads during the summer, and running a grader, that sort of thing.
Okay, cool. It's a honest living.
During this time, it's guns, right? All in the background, hobby with guns. Was big into moving ponderous objects repetitively for no apparent reason. I spent a lot of time in the gym.
I like that one.
And I also I had picked up guitar during college, right? So metal band, the whole thing in college.
No
just
way.
The stereotypical thing, the barbarian hedgehog. Shout out to Ash Cook and Sticky and
that's
Thomas
awesome.
and Shade and the whole deal. But so we're doing that, and then afterwards, so it's like, I miss the whole playing thing, and I'm working as the roadmaster and the whole thing. And
Not what I envisioned, but okay.
And this, I know we're off on a tangent, but this plays into what happens later. So I answered. We had the trade magazine back in. There's no Craigslist or internet, obviously.
For sure.
So there's one of these trade magazines, and there was an ad for looking for a guitar player for a Texas blues and classic rock band, or southern rock band, which I hadn't played a whole lot of, honestly. Not gonna lie. So I go to an audition for this dude called Hal Beveridge, right? Who is apparently not apparently. He was an outlaw biker out of Michigan who had moved back to Pennsylvania. He was originally from PA. But so I answered this ad, show up at the guy's basement and audition, and I don't know what I'm doing. But I can play all the chord forms and stuff that he wants me to do, but I'd never done this before. And so the thing is, but I could solo, I could run a pentatonic, Hammett-esque kind of deal, right?
Sweet.
So this thing gets over, and I'm thinking it's going terribly, and he's like, all right, we got a gig tonight at show up at 7:30 to set up. So I have no idea what the set list is or anything like that. So
oh my God.
And that starts my musical kind of career after that. So
that's hilarious.
During that 2-year period that I'm doing the whole Roadmaster thing, I played in 3 different bands, still mainly Beveridge Brothers Band. Some great folks and fantastic musicians there, and Mary Beth and Calvin and Chad and hey guys. But,
that's awesome.
And another band called Wiggle Puppy where we did top 40 stuff. But anyway, so we do the guitar thing.
It's a great name. I love that.
In the meantime, kind of my physical. So I'd tried twice now or 3 times at this point to talk to recruiters or actually get a waiver process to get into the military, and I still wanted to do that. And I looked at happened to be going to the gym one day, and I realized that my physical had expired, right? So it had been 2 years since the last time I tried to get into the Marine Corps, and I had to drive by the recruiting office to go to the gym. And so just that day I pulled into the recruiter's office, and what the hell, I'm going to give it another shot. And so we had some conversations, and before you know it, I was headed to Parris Island. I got my waiver, and it's going to be,
So how?
Recruit Liptak.
So it took you 3 tries.
Yeah, three honest tries plus some conversations previously. Okay. I tried to do an X-ray thing with the Army in there between when I had been denied once, but that didn't go either.
Okay, so I'm curious, 2 times they denied the medical waiver. What did they give you some reasoning why they gave it to you on the 3rd one? Was it just your persistence? Was it It
was persistence and the luck of the draw, right? Once again, Providence plays a part.
Gotcha.
And I got a different doctor for the consult.
Nice.
Who the other guys were like, well, you can do everything and it doesn't seem to be a deficit, but the rules say it's disqualifying, so I'm not going to approve the waiver. It's like, well, the whole point of the waiver is that it's disqualifying, but if I can do it, you're supposed to. Yeah. The doctor this time around said, you know what, you're perfectly capable of doing this stuff, so have fun storming the castle.
Ha! That's awesome. All right, so you're on your way.
Yep, on my way. So Parris Island, the whole deal. While I'm on Parris Island, so I'm a college graduate at this point, right?
Okay, cool.
Obviously.
Cool.
So you get E2. I get my little my bump to chicken scratch above less than chicken scratch, whatever the normal pay is.
Yeah.
But it wasn't what I was there for, obviously.
For sure.
But so you get E2 out of there. I was company honor grad out of SOI, so I got meritorious Lance out of that, headed to 1-7, and was on my way. And so tried out for stay, or tried to go to stay, but they picked a minor league baseball player to go there over me. So
Damn him.
Had a higher rifle score.
See?
But anyway, so once again, Providence, right? Because I might have stuck around more based on if I had made it to stay. So I'm in 1-7. I'm a team leader, very quickly became a squad leader as a Lance Corporal at like a month in the fleet.
Wow.
Which was awesome. And that felt great. But very short time in the fleet, however. I had put in an officer package on Parris Island because I did the college, right? And so my series commander, I was a platoon guide and the whole thing. The series commander would call me into his office like every single day trying to force me to put in an officer package while I was on Parris Island. And I eventually relented, which, by the way, if you want to make your life on Parris Island interesting, put in an officer package while you're on Parris Island and have yet to become a United States Marine.
Good pro tip there for all you up and coming Marines. I like it.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting. We'll get some comments from that. Damn you, Duane. Damn you.
In any case, but I liked being an enlisted Marine, and it was a heavy decision when that came back. What eventually caused me to kind of go and make the decision to go to the officer path is we were getting an influx and kind of more folks were coming, and we had some more corporals coming in. And my first sergeant at the time, who was a motor T guy, would not meritoriously promote me to corporal because I didn't have like 3 years or whatever in the Marine Corps or whatever he wanted me to have. And it's like it was purely a time and grade thing. And I didn't want to get bumped back down to, doing the team leader thing. And I just didn't know that I had the right amount of influence at that point for where I was at mentally. And maybe I was wrong, right? Okay. I could be my own arrogance at that point making me feel that way. But whatever, end result was I head off to OCS.
Okay.
So do OCS, do TBS. And I am, do well in that because I'm completely belt fed and I can call cadence and drill the platoon around all over the place. I think I was platoon sergeant in OCS for like the last 4 weeks or whatever.
Wow.
Marching everybody around. But it was, so, I love that stuff, and my NAVMAC 2691 still near and dear to my heart. But they've changed the name of the pub now, but I didn't, not after,
Whatever.
So do OCS, do TBS. And TBS, it comes time for MLS selection, right? And so it's, the top third, middle third, bottom third. I'm 5th in the class, I think, or somewhere around there. And so I'm going to get whatever I want, pretty much.
Nice.
And everybody assumed that I was going to take infantry. And I, up until the very end, thought I was going to as well. Huh. So I had our company commander was an F-18 driver. And so I'd had some conversations with him. And I was looking at the world at the time. And this is 99. We're Clinton era. I didn't know that we were ever going to get into an actual land war ever again, right? It didn't seem like this is once again one of Liptak's not very good prophetic measures.
My crystal ball's not very accurate either.
Yeah, mine's terrible. But so at the time, it just seemed like the only way to actually be able to fight, and honestly, as an officer, the only way you are the war fighter is to be in the seat of a jet.
Yep.
And you get to do that all the way up through lieutenant colonel, right? And so it's like, well, that seems appealing. I had never flown anything in my entire life. I had never had a desire to fly, but that seemed like what I needed to do. And it's like, well, I'll just be a fighter pilot, right?
Why not?
So I put in. I'm going to put that in on my MOS request because they remind me as we go into this thing is, hey, Liptak, you took the ASTB, so you're already qualified for flight if you want to do flight. And so that's what kind of got the wheels turning, right? Because all the way back when I had taken it in college to try and get help my application, not because I wanted to fly, but just because I wanted to help my chances to get accepted. So off I go and decide that's what I want to do. My SPC at the time, who was an Harrier aviation officer or maintenance officer, she begged me, nearly in tears, to not go into the air wing.
Why?
Because I was belt fed, right? Like the horseshoe haircut, the spit shine green jungles worn up to the very last day that we could possibly do that. I was absolutely, over the top gung ho. And she's like, you will ruin the air wing or the air wing will ruin you. One of the two.
Oh God. So at her, I guess she was trying to save the Marine Corps Air Force?
I don't know if it was that or just she didn't think it was the right move for me or a combination of the two. But
she was in tears.
Pretty much against her, urging. I decided I was going to do it. I'm going to be a fighter pilot. And it's like, if what happens in she's the devil's advocate stuff. What happens if you're a C-130 pilot or if you end up being a 46 pilot? I'm like, well, I'm not. I'm going to be a fighter pilot.
Why would you say that? I just told you I'm going to be a fighter pilot.
which falls also into kind of the chance to taking a chance and just believing that you can do what you want to do. That's a big factor. I never let anybody tell me no if I thought I could do it.
Right, 100%.
And just that's another big factor that shows up repetitively throughout my life. And so off I go to flight school. And while I'm sitting in operational navigation class in intermediate jets, after I got jets, right? So I'm going.
There you got it.
Yeah, exactly. Going on that path. 9/11 happens, right?
Oh wow.
And so now I'm stuck in flight school.
Oh, that's true.
With a long road to finish that, and the ground war's kicking off, and Liptak is
lo and behold
kicking himself.
There's that ground war.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like when I was enlisting, I was underage when I went to the recruiting station, and there wasn't the internet to research the NECs or any kind of whatever, and I remember there were some friends of mine that had pursued military service. Some of them were already enlisted, and I went to the recruiting station and I said, this is what I want. I want this and I want this. And the guy's like, well, you can't have both. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to enlist if I don't get both.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not possible. Nobody's ever done that. I'm like, well, I don't care. I want this and I want this. And I was relentless, and I just kept going back, and finally, if I'm not mistaken, he rotated out. His 2-year service time at the recruit station was over, and this other guy came in. And I went back, I don't know, it's like every 2-3 days I would go back and say, if you change your mind, change your mind. Like, where's Bill? Bill's not here anymore. I'm Joe. And I'm like, oh, good. Well, this is what I want. And he looked at me and he's like, all right, I'll write it up. And he wrote up the contract to include both those two things, which was BUDS and Intelligence A School.
Nice.
Like, those were not compatible at the time, even though it was the only A school that was kind of like, I thought, relevant to being a SEAL was intelligence. Like all the Gunner's Mate could have been definitely one, but intelligence was where I was really interested. And I remember that tenacity of just not taking no for an answer. I'm like, nope. And eventually I did get what I want. And so it's reassuring to hear other people also doing the same thing. And that's kind of, like there's those subtle life lessons that people will hopefully pick up on, which is, like you said, don't let somebody tell you no that you can do.
Yep.
Do it.
For sure.
Awesome. Okay, so you're watching the ground war in flight school.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
How'd that feel?
Not great. Not ideal. So at that point, the mission is to just get in the fight, right?
Yeah.
So getting through as quick as you can. Flight school is not a quick process, and there's a bunch of stashes and the whole thing. And it's
how long is flight school?
About 3 years.
Oh, geez.
For the jet pipeline, yeah.
Wow. I did not realize that. I was thinking it was like 3 months. How little Jeff knows about fighter pilots.
It's a fairly complicated skill set.
What?
Right?
Oh, come on. Jeez. All right, fine. Well, continue.
Yeah. So there's other providence that kind of happens in this whole thing. So the guitar playing becomes relevant in API, actually, backing up a little bit. So Aviation Pre-Flight Indoctrination down in Pensacola. It's like ground school before you start flight school. So there is an engines instructor there by the name of Trey Tonto Ardis, who has become my best friend in the world and best man at my wedding, whole deal.
Oh, wow.
So in any case, he's an instructor, and at the end of the first day of class, they had a band of instructors in VT-86, the training squadron for NFOs there. And so at the end of the class, he says, anybody here play an instrument? And so, a bunch of people put their hands up. He's like, what do you play? And play the piano. Okay, whatever. You play the violin.
Real
okay,
instruments,
whatever.
please.
And so I raised my hand and said, hey, what do you play? I play guitar. Like, are you any good? And I said, well, I've opened a Molly Hatchet 38 Special and David Allen Coe, and I've played to 10,000 people.
What do you think?
I'm not bad.
I'm not bad.
And so he's like, you see me after class. So I end up, long story endless, I sit in to finish out a night that their band is playing at like Trader John's down there. So it's I finish out the night. They bring me on stage to play Voodoo Child. So I play Voodoo Child with their band. And do the whole thing behind my head, behind my back, set the guitar on fire, the whole deal, right? And so that closes the night out.
So awesome.
That closes the night out, and then Trey comes over from behind the drum kit. He was the drummer, and puts his arm around me and says, "All right, this is the new band. How many of you want to be in my new band?" And
that's so awesome.
And so we played all over the place while I was going through the flight school pipeline and the whole deal.
That's pretty cool.
It was fairly interesting, but that plays into later. So Trey goes back to the fleet. He's at a squadron, VMFA W224, the Bengals, down there in Beaufort. I'm finishing up the RAG, or FRS, in Oceania.
Oh, nice.
And to finish my qualifications as a Hornet pilot about the same time. And so he pulls me down to 224 to get the band back together, right?
Oh, how convenient.
And
that's so awesome.
So this plays into Providence in that we're the first squadron East Coast to get the nod to go to Iraq.
No way.
So that all just kind of, that whole thing got me in 224, and off we go. And so I did, Iraqi freedom from January 05 until August 05.
Wow. How was that?
It was interesting. So being land-based out of Al-Assad, we flew a lot. I had 112 missions.
Wow.
Which is a lot. Like the carrier guys would come back with between 20 and 30 or something like that missions. But because we were land-based, running out of Al-Assad, it was every
way
day,
more convenient.
and you'd be doing long CFAC support missions, so 3-4 hours with multiple tanker hits and stuff like that, as well as supporting the Marine Corps and tanking off C-130s and LM-bar.
Wow. Well, that just, first of all, I have so many questions. All right, so many questions. First question is, how, when you were finally blessed to be a pilot, were you, because going back to your childhood when you had envisioned, okay, I wanted to be a Marine sniper.
Yep.
Did you find closure with that dream that you had as a kid and being a fighter pilot? Did that did you have reconciliation?
No.
Were you, no. Being a fucking fighter pilot is still not enough for Duane.
So that comes into play later again. But no, it was awesome. Don't get me wrong. It is one of the greatest ways to make a paycheck on the planet. Marine Corps can ruin everything. Don't get me wrong. So it's not all roses. But man, being a fighter pilot is awesome.
Yes,
I'm not gonna lie. That's honestly,
it's
cool as shit.
It is cool as shit. I'm not gonna lie. It's hard not to appreciate just the badassery about being a fighter pilot, a legitimate fighter pilot. So that is cool. So my second question is to you, what's your take on the updated Top Gun? Have you seen it yet?
I have not.
Okay, we'll have to come back to that.
Yep.
I'm curious to see what you think about it, because there were a couple Marine pilots in that were part of that whole mission. So I'm curious to see if they represented well.
So I have battle scars from the original Top Gun.
Oh, no.
So when I was at NAS Oceania, I lived in a beach house right on Chicks Beach.
I love that area.
Which awesome.
Yes.
Right. It was walking distance to the Hot Tuna, right? So,
oh, hell yeah. You're speaking my language.
Yeah, all the guys with the big watches are either aviators or SEALs.
So true. So true.
But one was a Hornet pilot and the other one was an F-14 pilot.
Interesting.
And I had gone actually through flight school with him. But he was so gay for Top Gun, and in the most flamboyant, not disparaging anybody's sexual preference, but
for sure,
just over the top for Top Gun, right? So he had a dog named Maverick.
No way.
And he would play that movie 47 times a day. It was on continuous rotation in our DVD player back then.
Yeah.
But so continuously playing at the beach house, and I got so burnt out on Top Gun, right?
Oh, I can appreciate that.
So,
yeah, I could appreciate that. All right, well, we'll have to circle back to that one. Okay, so fighter pilot in war.
Yeah.
How was that? Aside from all the glory to it, which we clearly have touched on, what was the hard part about being a fighter pilot in war?
Op tempo certainly is there. It's a very unforgiving activity. Apart from the the enemy threat, which was not terribly significant. Honestly, it's just,
For
at that point in the war,
Yeah.
a few man pads here or there and some small arms fire when you got down to like below 100 feet or whatever. But honestly, weather tried to kill you, and the jet tried to kill you more than anything. And that's the same way in peacetime, right? Which is, another thing that comes up later in my career. But the jet is constantly trying to kill you.
I love hearing it that way. That is perfect. I can really appreciate that.
And that's the mindset you have to have, is that the jet is at once your tool and your adversary. One
of my favorite collateral duties was being qualified for close air support, and going out to Fallon and calling in the fast movers.
Yep.
Like working with the rotary wing guys and even the A-10s was great, but being able to call in fast movers, and there was like three things that came along with that. One, the ability to deliver ordnance at so fast, so quickly, get them on target so quickly, right? I mean, that was huge. You're desperate. You need that. You need it now or yesterday, whatever. That was huge. But the other thing was, man, when the wings leveled up and you hear that jet engine coming across the landscape, I can remember, like it had an impact. Like just the engine roar coming over, knowing hell is coming, was another one of those things that, man, I never could, that was like, anytime we, like, Spectre and fast movers in the air were always kind of like this whoopee that I wore. I was like, oh, I feel so much better now. So, and the third thing was, the camaraderie between the special operations community and the fighter pilot community. There's always just this like grinding going on between who can do their job better.
Yep, 100%.
So it's like so much fun.
It's a collection of the biggest, Type A personalities in
doubt.
Both communities.
Yes.
And when you get the two together, it's oil and water sometimes,
so
but in a hilarious way, right?
It's always in good fun because,
right.
At the end of the day, everybody's going to do everything for everyone.
Yep.
But, it's still, and I also, I've said this before on other podcasts where I also feel like that's a huge advantage because that also pushes us to drive harder, to be better, to be, you're good?
Yep.
Buddy, watch this, and so, it's always helping to push the envelope to try to be the very best that you can be. So
for sure.
I love that about the Type A personalities in a collective, or even as individuals, but as a collective, because I think it really draws out the best of both.
Yep.
Really forces you to bring your game to a new level. All right, so what happens once the war or your involvement in the war ends?
So we're coming back. So of relevance, we do a lot of raid support. So we're doing a lot of TF support for direct action CT stuff.
Yep.
With our squadron over there. That we get exposure to some things there. I get my FAC A qual, right? So to be able to be a FAC from the air. Interesting. Which is also pays forward because there's an understanding of close air support that you get from having to do it at 500 knots.
Yes.
That kind of adds something, right?
For sure.
So we come back, and so what do we do now?
Yeah.
And it's, okay, we're going to go on Westpac. We're going to do a quick turn, and we're going to cover Westpac so somebody else can go back to the war. I'm like, I don't want to go to Japan.
Yeah.
So
there's a war over
here. There's a war. And it's all
Who
over.
wants
There's
to
like 2
not
theaters, It's like we've got lots of opportunity here, but no, somebody has to cover Westpac. And so I'm at 2 years in the squadron, but I'm just over my 2 years, so I could actually start looking for a B billet, which is what I do. Once again, things that I'm not going to. There's a war.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be fighting a war, and this is where I kind of want to scratch that ground itch, right? So I start looking at opportunities, and they're standing up this whole thing called MARSOC at the time, right?
Oh, yes.
So, and there's a book out right now, and, there's, I forget what Fred calls me in the book, but it's like, I'm the guy that interviewed in a strip club to be the first MARSOC FAC, right? So,
no way.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to get this now. I can't wait.
But so it's there's not a whole lot else about me in there but that, because it's really about the guys, because of what they got put through, which is ridiculous. But in any case, so that's me. I was the first MARSOC FAC for MSOC F.
Nice.
And then from that, went back to it's also like, hey, we're going to a shooting package in Hawthorne. Holy crap, the FAC can shoot, right?
Yeah, baby.
Which was cool, and there was a great acceptance there, and
so
it was awesome, and I really loved those guys, and a lot of those guys are, just just an awesome unit,
For
a
sure.
bunch of collection of dudes. So we come back from that the Marine Corps doesn't know what to do. They make it look like, kind of MSPF, right? Which is this giant ball of men and followers and drivers and gunners and the whole thing. And the infrastructure for Siege Stotive doesn't know what to do with that, right? So they throw us there. They don't know how to use us, whatever.
I hate that.
Yeah, so it was frustrating. So after that whole thing, and we come back through, after that deployment is over, I become the battalion air officer and also part of kind of the reorg. So we start to make MARSOC look like ODAs or SEAL teams, whatever, so they can logistically plug us in to fire bases and things like that. So that happens, and I'm battalion aero at the time, and another one of my friends, Tubes Lawton, is the FAC and aero for MSOC H. And they're going to go out again on like a quick turn 6 months after I had just come back, and they were short a JTAC. And so
how convenient.
It's like, okay. So I volunteer, much to the chagrin of my brand new wife at the time.
I was going to ask.
So I got married in between my first deployment and my second with MARSOC, and she was... Instead of going to Italy on my honeymoon, I went to Afghanistan for take 2.
Oh, yes. So let's back up a second. Okay, so you met your wife in between the MARSOC duty station?
Yeah, basically.
Between deployments at MARSOC duty station? Okay, all right, okay. So, and you decide to ditch her.
That's a really harsh way of putting it, but that's the way she sees it.
100%
the way she sees it.
I'm playing the devil's advocate here, though. But okay, so you ditch her to go play in Afghanistan.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of did the same thing. So go on, go on.
Had to do it, right? It's one of those things. Well, I wasn't gonna let him go short,
for
right?
sure.
So,
I mean, I was doing it for the team. Not me personally.
Well,
I get it.
It's I definitely had wanted, after the MSOC F deployment, definitely wanted to do another one, right? And so that's what I did. So that was a very successful deployment, hugely successful. We plugged right in. Everything was there. The training had changed as well to understand the mission set. We understood how to get things approved, I'm telling you, which was a game. As you know,
it totally
was purely a game, and so we played the game that time around. We got a lot of good work done. Right?
Nice. So what was your lesson learned between Iraq and Afghanistan? Being in both those conflicts, what was what lessons did you learn from Iraq that were relevant in Afghanistan, if any?
So the enemy was different.
Yes.
Very much so.
For sure.
The IED was kind of the weapon of choice.
Without a doubt.
In Iraq. And in Afghanistan, they were more willing to do a stand-up fight, especially at distance, if they thought they had the protection of distance. And so that, just understanding that difference. And I had not seen it from the ground in Iraq, so, I mean, I'm not trying to pretend that I did, but I saw it from overhead quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right? But definitely more willing to get into a straight-up gunfight in Afghanistan.
Yeah. And that's, again, one of the problems that we had is, especially when they started to move up in the mountain ranges, our air assets were limited to a certain extent, but that's where the fast movers really came in.
Absolutely.
And they came in hard, because that was an area, like you said, they think they can play the game at standoff distances, but if I can see you, I can kill you.
Yep.
Maybe not me kill you, but I can get him to kill you. So, that was another game changer for us. Is I think we really perfected our game. And when I say our game, I mean the collective between the fast movers, between the guys on the ground, and that communication. Because, it's always evolving, but it seemed like when I first was, like, the difference between when I was first trained on how to call in fast movers to how they do it right now became so much more briefer and more concise and more relevant as far as the actions are, because things are happening so much faster. So that was good. So that was kind of what I was hoping for, was that was kind of what you would see as well, is like a much more like it's still a fight, and it's a different type of fight, but you can see the fight because now they're fighting from higher up in the ridgelines and whatnot. So that's awesome.
You got the opportunity to find, fix, and destroy, basically.
Yeah, I love that phrase. That is my favorite phrase. Find, fix, and I use the term find, fix, and finish.
Yes,
because I have to have those 3 Fs. Like my OCD would kick in.
That's what it is. Yeah. But I just like the
destroy is also very, very fun to say. Like my OCD kicks in there. That's a perfect example. Nope, I have to find finish. Perfect.
Finish. There we go.
Finish. All right. So, and how long was that deployment?
So that one, it got moved to the right, and
nice.
I was turning into a pumpkin. In that,
you think?
If you stay out of the cockpit for 3 years, now I would lose all my quals. I would probably not be promotable, the whole deal. And so that was a really hard decision because I wanted to finish that deployment. It's one of the decisions that still haunts me to this day, right?
I have plenty.
I went back early, so I was there for, about 4 months, and ended up going back so that I didn't turn into a pumpkin. Ended up going back to NAS Oceana to redo my NATOPS quals and all that stuff, so that I would still have a career left as a pilot.
Nice.
Man, it's one of those things that, if I woulda, coulda, shoulda stuck around to the end of deployment.
The thing I have always learned about my and I don't like to use the term regrets. It's maybe more a more appropriate term is just like a bad choice that I made, or a choice that didn't have the outcome that I wanted.
Yep.
And that's the best way to look at it. Like, do I regret it? When I have to dissect it, because I'm trying to learn from everything. And so in that case, it was my decision making process that made me, or that I went one direction, but everything else went the other direction.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it. Is like, because I mean, a lot of times you're making these decisions for life without realizing what's really the long-term game or the long-term plan. You can't possibly have that type of future vision.
Absolutely.
So you're just making those decisions with what's right in front of you the best way that you can. And so sometimes I find a little comfort knowing that with the information that I had, I tried to make the best decision possible. And in the end, I had the same thing. I wish, damn it, I should have gone left instead of right. It's something that simple. That's all it was. Left instead of right. All right, so a little bit of regret, and you're moving forward.
Yep. So I get back, and at this point, I get caught by the Westpac thing. So
what does that mean?
I have to do a Westpac.
Oh!
So I end up going back to 224, and they're going on a Westpac on another quick turn, which my wife was again super enthused about. We had just had our first child.
Oh, nice.
And off I go to Japan.
Nice. Well, at least you're in Japan and not Afghanistan. I'm sure that was reassuring for her.
Right. So the deployment cycle was back in that time frame, and whether you were going to war or you were covering something else, UDP for somebody else that was able to go to war, right? So that everybody was doing everything. It was crazy.
Yes.
You get 6 months back and you're gone again.
Yeah.
So we went back, did a Westpac, and did the whole thing. As a coincidence, so once again, Trey plays back into this. Is when I was in JBAD, the first deployment, he ends up showing up with your guys.
No way.
He's a FAC, and he's right across the road from me in JBAD. So
no way.
We're in JBAD together.
That's hilarious.
And we were both coming back from all that, and I go on UDP to Iwakuni, and he is the HNSS CO in Iwakuni at that time, and so we link up back together and we play in another band.
Is it really that small of a community, or is that just really luck?
That's luck. I mean, that's once again, that's like crazy providence.
That is pretty crazy.
It's insane.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so that was interesting. That's also, I've had an interesting path with faith throughout my life, and actually, I truly consider that I was saved in the Christian sense of the word, in a little Baptist church off of Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni, thanks to Trey.
Nice.
At that time, and so that's kind of, I was raised Roman Catholic and the whole deal, and it just never really, the Catholic guilt thing didn't resonate.
Oh no,
didn't work out for me, and I wandered for a while, and I was a bit of an asshole, to be polite. But and eventually though it all worked out, and I understand now that, from my perspective, whether you believe it's divine providence or it's just you're exerting your will across the universe, or it's, an intelligent creator of some sort, I believe it's, it's God, once again, protecting fools and children, and
he does it good.
I'm a fool.
Okay, so you're hooking up again with Trey, and now what's going on?
So at this point, it's normal Westpac stuff.
Okay.
Nothing. We'd do our little deployments there, and end up coming back from that. On the back side of that deployment, do some red flags and things like that. And then March 10th, 2010 was a day that we had a jet that was down. I was QA officer in the maintenance shop. And we had a jet that was down, and they were trying to get it up for the flight schedule the next day. So we made mission and the whole deal as far as the number of up jets. And I went out to pro it. We take off, and it's a functional check flight. So it's a maintenance flight where you take off and you go through this card of maneuvers that you have to do to make sure the jet's good to go to be able to fly.
Right.
So a less experienced pilot, or a more experienced pilot, honestly, could take it the next day. So, but there's this thing that pilots that have certain qualifications just go through this checklist, right? Make sure everything's good to go and nothing's broken after the maintenance.
Got it.
So we go out and the jet goes down in the line, and so we can't take off, and they have something else to fix. So I go back in, and at like 4:30 p.m., they're like, "Hey, sir, can you take this pro right now? If you do, we can get this jet up, and then we can, have the jet for the flight schedule." Like, no problem, I'll stay late, whatever. So my Wizzo and I go out and take this jet off and go out to do the post-maintenance check flight. And at some point during this whole maneuver, there's a fuel line clamp, right? And it's a large fuel line. It's a motor flow boost line. It's the only fuel line in the entire jet that does not give you the warnings of a fuel leak, right? There's no boost low. There's no other cautions that would say that you have a fuel leak. Somebody didn't fasten that clamp, and they didn't check it as part of the post checks after the maintenance. But anyway, so this clamp comes off at some point during the flight. And we end up with a dual engine fire, right, as a result of it, which is significant in that you only have two. So when they're both on fire, there's the procedure is basically get out of the jet. But so we stuck with it for 9 minutes.
9 minutes?
9 minutes we were on fire.
That's a long time to be on fire.
It was an exceptionally long time to be on fire.
Did you feel the heat?
Oh, yeah. 100%. It was hotter than the hubs of hell in there. So it's like all you could see is orange just glowing off the canopy, the whole back end of the jet.
Are you fucking kidding me?
There's a jet from 251, I think it was, or 115, I can't remember, that joined up on us and like, you guys are definitely on fire. You look like a comet. Like, oh, great, thanks.
Thanks for that note.
But I knew that. But thanks.
But thanks anyhow. Appreciate that. That's recorded now. So for prosperity's sakes, appreciate that. That's Indeed. Awesome. Okay, so you're on fire.
Yeah.
Very few things motivate me, but being on fire is one.
Yeah, that's there's a sense of urgency there.
Yeah, you think?
So we go through.
Apparently not enough. 9 minutes being on fire, Duane.
I wanted to say that. I wanted the air medal, man. Oh!
All right, fair enough. Respect. Writing it out for that air medal.
Yeah.
Good for
well,
you.
that's not really what's in my mind. I much would rather land the aircraft than go swimming.
I totally get it, yeah.
Because we caught on fire 80 miles off the coast of South Carolina, and levity aside, that's a long way to be back.
How many miles off?
80 miles. It was weird.
So you're like a speck in the water.
Yeah, more. Usually I do them very close to shore, but all the airspace was used, so we had to take that one. It was late in the day. Everybody else was finishing up a bunch of other stuff.
And you know what's so funny? And I know you've seen this too. A lot of these major incidences are never the result of one. The fuel pump.
Swiss cheese.
Yes.
It's a Swiss cheese model.
It's like all these little events that just gain momentum. Mm-hmm. And then through that momentum, you can't stop them.
Yeah.
It's like, again, late into the day, several fails before it got to the flight line, being all the way out in the middle of 80 miles, it's not really in the middle of nowhere, but it's 80 miles away from somewhere.
Yep.
And it's just all these little things, like everything that I've seen, every major event like that had a bad outcome that has happened in my military career and outside the military career. If you just take a step back, you can see these little bitty things that ultimately, dominoes that just eventually led to that. All right. So you're on fire. You're 80 miles from the coast. And
we're not going to make it.
Oh,
it becomes apparently obviously clear.
Are you losing altitude, speed, everything?
We're stabilized down at 5,000 feet, but we shut down the right motor because that's the one that showed secondaries first. Unfortunately, it was the left engine that was spewing fuel, but didn't show secondaries of any kind. In any case, the whole aircraft had burned up basically at that point. All the fuel's gone. It's burned up. We're down at like 400 pounds. Actually, when we eject, it was showing 224 on the fuel gauge, which was kind of funny. It was like, that's our squadron.
Okay.
But the jet starts flaming out, and we were going through our controlled ejection checklist. We had already swept for boats and like turned parallel to the shore, so the jet didn't go even over 35 miles out still. But and so we're going through the controlled ejection checklist, and the jet starts sputtering. And I'm like, whoop, never mind. We just got to go now. So eject, and pull the handles, and away we go.
All right. So how was that experience?
Acceleration is an interesting thing.
Because you're already traveling at, how fast were you going at that point?
So about 230 knots. Which is not fast for an F-18. We would slowed it down, but, you're going pretty fast. So the first thing that happens is the canopy blows, right?
Yep.
So now you're flying a convertible at 230 knots or 250 miles an hour, right?
Oh, my God.
Which is a little shot in the face, right?
Oh, my God.
But then there's like this pregnant pause after the canopy blows. So there's
Sure.
a det cord that goes off around your whole head, and the canopy blows off, and so there's this really loud explosion, right? Which probably is another contributor to my hearing loss and little TBI, right? So that happens, and then there's like this pregnant pause, like, wait a minute, we're supposed to, and as soon as you get that out, like the rear seat goes, and so there's flames, and the rear seat goes up out, and like, all right, cool, Sanders made it out of there, and like, okay, is my seat going, and just, it's just long enough for all this stuff to process, and there's some time compression here, obviously, right?
Of course.
Because the whole thing happens in like, 2 seconds or a second.
Blink of
and
an
a half.
eye.
But and then finally I'm flying up out of the aircraft at 23 G's of transverse force at a 200 G's per second onset rate, which made me a half inch shorter and broke my T3.
Oh, Jesus.
So, but up the rails I go. Canopy comes out. Canopy's got a big hole in it. That's not cool, but I'm over water, so that's
Is that because
kind
of because the plane was on fire?
I don't think that was a factor.
Okay.
Obviously, the fire wasn't up to my cockpit.
Okay,
maybe if it was the Wizzo chute, I would say.
Whoopsie,
'cause
sorry,
he was
buddy,
behind me,
my
I'm
bad.
like,
I waited a little long.
Probably should have got out earlier. Sorry, buddy. But no, his chute was okay. And honestly, it was a basketball size hole in one of the gores near the top, and really didn't affect much. I was dropping a little faster.
Yeah, but you're also dropping
into the water.
Yeah,
so
dropping into the
no
water.
big deal. So yeah, we drop into 52-degree water.
Yay!
And we didn't wear dry suits because we were in a hurry to go out and do
Would you normally wear dry suits?
that's right on the borderline.
Okay.
So you'd think about it.
Okay.
We also didn't expect to go 80 miles offshore, right? So it was, we thought we'd be
again,
right
the culmination
by
of these
all
little
this stuff
things,
lines
man.
up.
God, Jesus, amazing.
So we sit in the ocean on our little tiny rafts for about 55 minutes or an hour, and
It took that long?
yeah, Coast Guard comes to pick us up about an hour later.
What?
In 52
Is that normal?
Response time for that far from Charleston, which is where they came out of, yes.
Okay, well, I imagine there is the but they didn't get, so they got a cutter out to you or the helo?
No, so the helo.
It took them that long to get the helo out there?
Yeah.
Damn.
So it's and once again the 25-cent pen flare is what got them in on us, because our radios didn't work. One of the transmitters was broken and one of the receivers was broken, but all we knew is we couldn't.
Was any of that a result of the ejection?
I'm sure the forces at play were a factor, right?
Okay, good.
The other
Because
side
that's
is
a lot of shit to not work.
And neither of the transponders in our seats worked. So the seats have transponders, but either they didn't work or they're in the water at that point, and so they're
so there's a limit to how much they can work.
Right, but they're supposed to. And anyway, so we're sitting in the middle of the Atlantic. It's
Gotta love
almost
the lowest
dark.
bidder. Lowest bidder for the U.S. Army and U.S. military. Yay! I'm sorry. So you're saying?
Oh, good. No, so we're out there, and it's pen flares that actually save us because they fly right by us, and it's like so because we're little specks in the middle of a 6 foot
I don't think people can appreciate that. That's like literally looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, can't see land, and there's white caps all over the place, right? Because of the 6 foot seas. So like they've got all this stuff to see, and and we're freezing to death and the whole deal. But they come back around, pick us up, and never been so happy to get in a helicopter in my entire life.
For sure.
Hypothermic as hell, can't even talk. Like you
Yeah,
know how when you get
yeah.
that cold and your jaw can't move.
Yeah.
Like but we ended up coming back, and of course that was probably beneficial because I didn't feel the broken back.
Good point. Yeah, the cold kind of does a good numbing action. Man, okay, so there's a lot to process there.
So I get off the Coast Guard helo back when we're back there, and I have my leg garters. That's the only part that stays with you when you eject from the aircraft. Your leg garters that they pull your legs back into the seat when the ejection sequence happens, but they stay with you. They get cut off. So I go up to get off the Coast Guard helicopter, and number one rule is, is always be cool, right?
For sure.
So I go over to the skipper with my leg garters, and I hand him my leg garters, and I say, "Hey, skipper, aircraft 164694 is going to be down for power lines."
Did he appreciate your humor?
Yeah. At that point, he was just super happy that we were alive.
Yeah.
Right? You know?
Good for you to having a little spunk still in you.
Yeah, but so then.
How long did it take before the pain set in?
It's about 24 hours.
Oh, really? Okay.
The next morning, I woke up and this is not good, right? So anyway, so I have a long recovery there, and honestly, what happens when a T3 breaks? or any spinal fracture, you're done, right? So I was cleared to fly from mishap investigation, the whole thing. We were actually cleared, no pilot error on the whole SIR when they finished that up like a year and a half later or whatever.
Wow.
But so we were cleared to fly from a performance evaluation board perspective, but medically, I was not in a position to get back in an ejection seat.
Man, I can't imagine that. That would, yeah, Jesus, you survived that one. Rolling the dice for a second one is...
And it honestly, there's a path back to it, but I had to wait till the fracture healed. Then I had to do something for a year in a staff job, working manpower or something in the mag or whatever. And then I could try for a waiver to get back into an ejection seat. And if I didn't, then I would,
You and waivers,
me and waivers do not have a good history.
No. It's so funny. I when you were talking about, the deck cord going off, canopy going, then there's that pause. So when I had my one cutaway, I remember, and it happened, it was a high-speed malfunction. So I'm sorry, it was a low-speed malfunction. So there was plenty of time for me. And I remember when I reached down to look at my reserve ripcord or the pillow and my reserve ripcord, and I remember distinctly pulling, and I remember holding the ripcord in my hand thinking, I should feel something. Whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
So funny to see
same
the same
thing, because your life literally depends on that thing working.
Pretty
at that
much,
point.
yeah. I am below. I was, I think, when I pulled the reserve, and so it was a slow speed. So there's plenty of thought involved in this one. I was thinking a lot as opposed to just a high speed where you just go.
You gotta have to react.
Yeah. So I think the last time I looked at my altimeter, before I reached in to grab the machinery there, was about 1900. So I was well below 2000. And I got chastised for taking so long to make the decision, and then I got chastised for not following the main down into the water because we were down in Key West. So, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna land on land if you don't mind. You guys can go get that fucking canopy if you want it so much."
Yeah.
So that time lapse, what you perceive to be time, is just so funny because I swear to God, I felt like it was like 1001, 1002. I'm just waiting, any minute now, and then it's just as soon as I started to think it actually happened.
And there's numerous times in everything from gunfights to other aviation things in bad weather or maintenance malfunctions and things like that where that occurs.
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
So it's very strange, but...
And it's a phenomenon that I don't think, when you experience it, it's like, wow. That's weird. It's like, people talk about it, but when you actually experience it, it's like, whoa, that was wicked.
Temporal distortion is a thing for sure, man.
Quick word from our sponsor. We've been working with the folks at 1776 for comprehensive insurance of our firearms collections, and I'm really happy with how things are going so far. And one of my concerns is with the amount of commuting that I do with my firearms collection. What happens should my vehicle be broken into or stolen with my firearms? And there's reason to have this concern because there's 800,000 vehicles stolen per year in America. So it's not, it's a little bit more common than what we might think. What I mentioned earlier is that they have a comprehensive insurance plan, which is that they will cover your firearms stolen out of your vehicle, or should your vehicle be stolen, cover the firearms that were in the vehicle. So that's pretty reassuring in a sense. So I've mentioned this before, but the process to apply is pretty easy. Approval is pretty quick. They do not require you provide a itemization or serialized numbers. There's no appraisal or schedules that you have to provide. So really all you want to do is just make sure you have proof of ownership, and that's it. So if you want to learn more about the folks from 1776 and insuring your firearms collection, visit 1776insurance.com. All right. So you're healing, trying to get back. What's happening now?
So now I have the option. I can try and stick around and get a waiver, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe, be a year behind my peers, maybe lose my promotability, or I can get med boarded out. And so a lot of soul searching there.
Yeah, for sure.
Another tough decision, but it's actually one of the, once again, providence or whatever, but I end up making the decision that I'm going to try and head to the firearms industry at that point.
Interesting.
So I was actually, what's my plan getting out? I didn't want to fly. Flying was a way to get to work for me, right? I never wanted, so it's like all I cared about was
take the F-18 to the compound today.
I wanted to drop bombs and run 20 Mike, right?
Yeah.
That was just the bus.
Yes.
But so I didn't want to fly an airliner for sure. And so, it's like, well, firearms industry, I want to do that. Guns had been there throughout my entire life. I still had a passion for that. Had done gunsmithing continuously. So I start trying to figure things out, and I remember I was ordering a set of scope rings for a project I was hopefully going to be able to put together, and I ordered them off of Brownells, and just out of pure luck, they had something on their careers page. And I had looked at a bunch of other companies, and just nobody seemed to be hiring. And anybody who's come out of the military trying to get into the firearms industry can probably relate to this, because it's difficult to break in, right?
Yeah.
And there's certain things they may or may not be looking for, but it's tough. So they have something on their careers page, and it's 2 coordinator positions, right? And the pay is like 1/3 of what my current pay is.
God.
And so anyway, I end up interviewing anyway, because it's about the only thing I could find.
Right.
And I convinced them to put both of those positions together, because I can do both. Like, easily.
Smart.
I can do both.
Smart.
Just pay me a little bit more. It's still less than half of what I was making as a major on full flight pay and the whole deal. But
shit.
it's a little change in the standard of living. Wife was not really enthusiastic about my plan.
Oh no.
But it's like, just trust me on this one.
Yeah, she probably loved moving to Iowa.
Yeah. Yeah, Montezuma, Iowa was not her cup of tea, but I loved it. But but we in retrospect, she actually enjoyed it once we got there.
I think it is a nice place. It takes a while to kind of, again, it's like you were. I mean, it was very similar to what you grew up with.
Yeah,
a small
exactly.
town.
Small tiny town. It was home to me to a large extent. Yeah. Adjustment for her, but she grew to love it. So
good.
So I was there, worked with Brownells, still love the Brownells to this day. Good friends with Pete and a lot of the folks. Malachi is hilarious. And Clayton
I know.
and all the guys there are just great people.
Yeah.
But it was time. I wasn't being employed to what I could achieve at there, and I ran into the Magpul guys, right? And
who were the Magpul guys at that time?
So at the time, I had talked to, I had a meeting. We went out there, Jeff, Malachi, and I went out for like some preparedness expo. Brownells was going to do like storage food and stuff, and I was a preparedness nut.
Okay.
Survivalist back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, for sure.
And now it's like preparedness, so it's a softer term. But in any case, so we end up going out there for that expo, and we stop and visit Magpul while we're out there. And it was Drake and Doug and Robert Vedrine at the time. So we had the conversations there, and next thing you know, I start communicating, off to the side with Robert, and like, hey, would you be interested in, XYZ? And so, long story endless, they ended up hiring me to come over to run Dynamics at the time, right?
Nice.
So this was right after, Haley's gone, Costa's gone, and they had wanted to kind of repair some of the relationships with military units and things like that were kind of strained at time due to whatever things were going on with Dynamics at the time. So I come back, and honestly, that wasn't what they really wanted me for, but that was the safe way to bring me in to see if I was an idiot.
I gotcha.
Right, or going to go off the rails or whatever. So I come in, run Dynamics. Within a very short period of time after that, I'm involved in product development, and within a couple months, I'm director of product management. Right.
Holy shit.
So then I have that, and then within a couple months after that, I'm director of product management and marketing. And so they throw stuff at me, and honestly, their wisdom in kind of setting things up that way was because that's the way it was. Richard did product management as well as the marketing side, and it just made sense because our marketing, people say we're a marketing company or clever or whatever, but the marketing is really, this, apart from some of the humor, is just talking about the product.
So true.
And the best way the best people to talk about what the value proposition to use an overused term, but what the value proposition of a product are the people that created it, right? Yeah. So product management needs to be tied into marketing and should all report through the same structure, and that's kind of what their thought was. So
nice. All right. So what time period was that?
This was 2012 April 2012 when I started there.
All right. So. And like I obviously I was around for the Magpul Dynamics, the early years. I don't remember exactly what was happening towards the end. I mean, did they just dissolve that for lack of interest, better use of company resources, future vision type stuff?
So there was a lot of reasons, and some we just won't get into. But in any case, it's winding down. The personalities wanted to kind of go their own way.
Yeah.
And there's various other considerations that were in there, but whatever. They wanted to continue it to some extent, but there was obviously a paradigm shift. And so Magpul Dynamics, for love it or hate it, the video series and
Yeah.
just what it was, it changed the face of what we do in training, right?
100%. That's where I was going with it. It's like, because for those that weren't around or weren't in the industry, again, whether you like it or not, it represented the next step, in a sense, in the training business. And so, I don't think of it as a step backward. I think of it as a step forward.
For sure.
It revolutionized a lot of things.
Absolutely.
It really made things more prominent in today's landscape. So, I was somewhat curious as to the decision making, is because I looked at it as successful. I'm on outsider looking in.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, well,
hard to argue it from any other perspective of being successful. And they wanted to continue that, but perhaps in a different way, because what had happened and the landscape was changing to some extent is, we'd gone through the whole DVD series, right?
Yeah.
And so that had done what it needed to do.
For sure.
And that it created accessibility and generated interest in in-person training, which is, there's no replacement for the in-person immersive training at all. But the difference, like if you go, even like at the time, like go back to 2006, when I'm headed to Gunsight to do API 250 and reading this book by this guy, Speedy Gonzales.
Wow, we're really dating.
When I'm on the plane to go to Gunsight,
I love that. Oh my God.
I read your book.
I am honored, actually. I'm very honored. I did not know that. That is so cool.
Absolutely.
And on your way to Gunsight, the Mecca. That's so cool.
But it was different between what was presented in class. And like if you look at a Gunsight video on VHS from that time frame, it's a talking head. It's very dry. It's hard to stay awake.
Very. I understand why they did it, but like you're saying, the needs of the public were changing. And that's why I thought the video series was hugely successful, was because it also the step that I'm referencing was a step from more towards edutainment.
Exactly.
Where it
was watchable.
Yes, where it became both education and entertainment.
Yep.
And that's a huge accolade for you guys in that sense, because it brought people in that might have been like, oh, I just can't sit here and listen to this. I understand it's valuable, but and so kudos to you guys on that front. And for whatever reason, I'm sure that it was a good reason to kind of everything serves a purpose and runs its due course. After a certain point, you do have to, like, what's next.
Right.
So Magpul Dynamics, it runs its course, and you guys then relocate assets to future development.
So what did and it also, the way people digested content had changed as well. For
sure.
So, and what that did, changes the face of training. There's tons of really good, high quality trainers out there at that point, because the training industry had gone,
crazy,
gangbusters, right? So it doesn't, it's like there's lots of people out there doing great work, and it became just as good from the perspective of supporting people wanting to become enthusiasts and to become educated and skilled, to support those activities as it was to try and to do it, organically. Now, to be fair, Richard was the kind of the mastermind behind the format and the whole thing, and just the Magpul Dynamics movement. So tons of credit to him, as with pretty much everything in the development of the company as far as the idea stuff, right? Design stuff, Mike Mayberry, absolute genius, and to this day just an incredible asset to the org. But Richard was behind a lot of the marketing stuff, as well as the idea for Magpul Dynamics. But so what that was is, one, there was some stuff that we did. We had some, because of the popularity, right, and some other factors, there were some things within the professional community that we had to mend some fences.
Well, I think feelings were hurt because of success. Certainly. And that's good on you guys to try to extend the olive branch, and because we are one big family. We're a dysfunctional as fuck family.
Oh, absolutely.
But we are one big family.
For
so
sure.
Kudos to you guys again for trying to go back out there and mend those fences and whatnot. I think that was smart. And I believe that you were successful in that. Those that are still butthurt are just still butthurt because they just have no better nothing better to do than be butthurt.
No, I think it did what we did, and it worked out. And we brought John Knipe on, and of course Steve Fisher in the day, and those great dudes.
Yes.
And so,
Steve, if you're listening to this, I do love you. Just so you know, continue.
And what was kind of happening at the time though is like the in-person training is now there's so many people out there doing it.
Yeah.
Like that's happening, and the idea of the DVD was kind of fading out, right? Yeah. And so we switched to the Magpul core kind of concept in that those activities needed to be, we were putting that activity towards testing out, trying the products as much, and that was always a Magpul Dynamics function as well. Yeah. But we became more dedicated in the core assets being used for that, as well as for the generation of short subject content.
Yeah.
Because people, it's just, the 1 minute to 5 minute videos became, that's the way people wanted to digest content. And so we moved towards that. And we still do that with like the extended minute. And
I love those
other things. So.
I do. I think, and I can argue with others about, what's that sweet spot as far as duration. And a lot of it is going to be content driven. If the content is good, you can extend it. But I feel as though the attention span for just about everybody is in between that 3 to 8 minute mark.
Yep.
And 5 minutes is like a good sweet spot. That's, the success for us has been in that ballpark as well. So the extended minutes were perfect. Another great example of that, the short and sweet and to the point.
And it depends on what people are doing too. If it's like randomly scrolling, right, and they come across something, they can digest that in under the less than 2 minute content. That's about the limit, right, for them to sit down and even watch something for 5 minutes, which doesn't seem like that long, but it's like, I'm gonna move on from here.
Yep.
Which becomes a different category of content, consumption. But so we have different things that we treat differently within those time limits.
Nice. All right, so now I think this is about the time that Richard formally retires?
Yeah, so we had done a bunch of line expansion stuff, and obviously one of the things, I was an AK aficionado of sorts, so that was our entrance into AK and bolt guns and Glocks and all those expansion things, right? As up to 2015, 2016. Richard was stepping away, kind of. He was he had saw the runway to wanting to retire, and he had a goal that he wanted to hit, and he did it in 2017. And we all didn't know, is he going to retire? Or retire?
Yeah.
And he retired.
Nice.
Right. So step back and
I haven't seen or heard from anything.
Not that he was a very public figure before, but
true.
But Richard, fantastic individual. Stay in touch with him to this day. But he honestly, just did other things. Always there as a resource, right? If I need him, right?
Nice.
So that's always there, and so it's not like he hid in the Himalayas or
for
something,
sure,
right?
For sure.
But just let us run with it at that point.
Well, that's I think ultimate goal for anybody is to pass the reins on and to see what they birthed grow into something outside of their involvement. And be able to kind of take a step back and say, it's strong enough to survive with the good people that I've picked.
Right.
And that's a huge, another big accolade. So we have some questions from our forum members.
All right.
That I want to add to our discussion here, because we're at a good point right now where we're almost up to speed with Magpul, where they're at. We're going to talk about where Magpul's going to go in just a second, but let's get into some of these questions. So, and this is a question that I actually, they are all relevant for me as well. Like I want to know these answers. Magpul branded underwear. When is it coming?
Not anytime.
And do you need models?
Well, wait, now that becomes more interesting to me. If you're in the game for it,
there might be something we can work.
We can make
there.
something happen.
Hey, man, I've been wanting to start an OnlyFans page for a while, so let's seriously talk about that.
We'll talk about this after for sure. Now, I mean, there's a bunch of things that we're doing in branded items and things like that, and so that's commensurate with the brand of this, where we're at, just as a brand. We do hats and tees and all the
I love
stuff.
the tees.
And the Christmas sweaters, I think they've been a phenomenal hit and stuff like that.
The last stocking hat was a hoot. So please continue with those.
Yeah,
because again, what that also demonstrates is that you guys don't take yourself too seriously.
No, you can't.
I know, but people, that's the thing. People, they do. That's the problem, is that they do take themselves seriously. So I love the ugly sweaters. Not that they're ugly, they need love too, but I dig them. And and I think the clothing line was great. And I think that this kind of is, maybe it's a little tongue in cheek, But you guys did good with the clothing line.
I think we ended up at a place where we were happy with the product, but honestly, what we weren't up to speed on like direct to consumer stuff. Our website wasn't there.
Yeah, that's a tough nut to crack.
And things had changed in kind of the world with everybody with the whole virtue signaling thing. So you're not going to get into,
that's a good point.
A lot of different retail outlets, which is how people like to at least be able to try on clothes. So
true.
If better for worse, that was one of Richard's kind of last passion projects. Is the apparel side, and he was very involved in kind of that aspect of it. So it just became kind of obvious that even after the last iteration, we were happy with the gear. Yep. Right, and it didn't make sense for us to go down it. So we went to the only apparel we do right now is just the novelty stuff and branded stuff, hats, tees, and various things that fill in there. And no, it doesn't slow down any of the other stuff because it's entirely different people that do that.
For sure.
From the stuff that's firearms goods, and people are like, oh, all you do is release T-shirts. I'm like, no, I just release a bunch of T-shirts.
We do good on that front.
An 18 to 24 month product development product cycle on the hard side is not the same as putting art on a T-shirt. So,
gee, it's too bad people don't really understand that. Next question. Again, it's close to me. Austin storefront.
Ooh, that's an interesting one, and it's one we have discussed. So we have a new headquarters in Austin that we just moved into.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a pretty phenomenal facility. It's, it's great. And all of the marketing functions take place there, as well as some product management right now, and then accounting and finance, typical headquarters functions.
Yeah. Is it near the old place?
It is not.
Okay.
It's down Southwest Austin area.
Gotcha.
But it's and we've discussed the idea of doing a storefront or a destination storefront where it's kind of the Magpul destination thing.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that we've discussed. I don't know. I don't know. I do know that we don't have concrete plans to do it, but it's still one of those things that we throw around every once in a while. It's like an idea.
I think it's a great idea. I think I think flagship type storefronts do well, especially with Austin being such a destination city.
Right.
What else can we do in Austin? Well, let's go visit the Magpul store and get some shit. So that's good. So I'm gonna toss my encouragement to see that happen for selfish reasons.
Excellent.
And this one is definitely selfish. I mean, I saw it on the form. I'm like, oh, I'm right. I'm adding this one. And this one is one that I've asked you before as well. P320 mags.
All right.
I know.
So there are a lot of things that we're working on in the pistol side of the house right now.
Duly noted.
And so I can't talk about necessarily products that are or not in development cycle. It's the standard very answer. But there's a lot of expansion onto the pistol side that we are very much working on right now.
Fair enough. All right, that's good. Those are good questions, good answers. I like them. All right, so that brings us up to the future of Magpul. Yeah. What does the future look like for Magpul? I mean, we've got a couple of these future questions type thing, but from your point of view, what is the future of Magpul?
So interestingly, product roadmap and the whole thing, that's certainly in my bailiwick, and there's a lot that we want to do. The firearm stuff, of course, we're going to continue down the products that we support, and we're going to expand the number of products we support. We have a lot of very exciting things in process.
Nice.
One of the things that I can say that we are going to do is we are moving, which is very atypical for Magpul. We're going to try to move away from talking about products before they are truly ready to ship, like a grown-up company.
What? Wow. Good for you guys.
But because we, especially in the COVID thing and post-COVID and some of the supply chain challenges and just the crazy stuff that we've been hit with, like MBUS 3 it's just not even comprehensible that the things that we've run into with that project. But all those things have caused delays beyond our ability to forecast, and it's not fair to the customer, and it just so
having kind of seen that side of the house, it's not easy. It's really challenging because you want to build interest.
Yep.
You want to build awareness. You want to be timing. You want to have that timing aspect done to it all. So there is some guesswork involved in that.
For sure.
And then you get a pandemic thrown at you, and it really kind of takes a lot of that out of your hands now. So I don't think that you guys did a terrible job on that end. I think if people really can see the writing on the wall, they can recognize that every industry, every manufacturer had monumental logistical issues that we're still trying to sort out.
Yeah,
so,
to be fair, though, we did it before that. So.
Well, I was trying to give you an out, Duane, but fine. Fall on the fucking grenade. That's fine.
No, we honestly, yeah, and it never is nefarious, and it's always from a sense of optimism in timelines,
Yeah, of course.
right? And it's, but we're also not going to ship something before it's ready.
That is the number one rule. It's gotta, because you unfortunately can't take away that first impression or first impressions on the Instagram or on the internet.
So everybody is really excited to see if they can find a flaw in something we make, right?
It'd be the first ones. It's like our industry has become like the journalistic industry from mainstream media. Who can be the first one to break a story about this shit? It's it's so annoying. It's like, fuck. And if anybody had, like, what bothers me the most is that a lot of those people just really don't have any insight into what happens. Now, granted, yeah, if it's an obvious flaw or fault or whatnot, sure, yeah. But sometimes these things also, there's what people don't understand is the hours that go into the product testing, not just the development, but the testing, and that you get to a point where you feel like all the boxes have been checked, and there's still some unknowns. There's still only there, because if you continue to test, that means that the product is not in the market. Yeah. So you have to walk this fine line between the testing and getting the product to the market. And so, and there are some obscure issues that come up that are the fringes. That's the other thing that people don't realize. They're the fringe issues that, you can either focus on those fringes or you can focus on the meat. Yep. And that's what big companies try to do, is focus on the meat and just, have good customer service and willingness to accept the ownership of the issues if they come up.
Yeah, so we try to hit, like the most esoteric and smallest failures, if it affects the value proposition, right? That's clearly not what we want to produce. Yeah. So, and sometimes those don't come up until very late, and it's like, doggone it.
Well, I mean, there's only so many, like I was saying, like what, like how many thousands of rounds do you have to fire to get to a failure point? And like, I'm by now, you guys know what that is, but I mean, at a certain point, okay, is there going to be any consumer outside of a professional that's actually going to get to that?
So, and so the interesting thing there is, so when you look at like Gen M3 PMAG for one is a great one. In documented U.S. government testing, we're at like 31,854 rounds or thereabouts between stoppages, right? So in order to get to a stoppage, it's stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's ridiculous. And in other testing that I hope to talk about soon, we're at multiples of that, right?
Oh my God!
With a slightly different platform, still DI gun, but it's crazy. And so we fire 500,000 rounds a year just for part testing. Of validation, and some of that's just lot validation on existing products and continuous existing products, and then it's development of new products. So it's crazy.
I can remember. So like my first Magpul story, Magpul magazine, PMag I should say, was like I remember it was Drake who came to the range, again, another Colorado training class that I was doing, and he had these magazines. And I remember looking at them, and I was like, okay. And he was gracious enough to give us some to use during the rifle class that we were doing, but we had to give them back. We just had to use them and give them back. And like I can remember, these are not GI mags. Like I just had. Oh yeah. But I was like, I like them though. I can't. Like there was these competing entities within me because all I ever knew was GI aluminum magazines. Yeah. And I think what made that deliverance more palatable was the follower. Yeah. When you guys made the follower that became standard.
That was my gateway drug too.
Yeah, it was. Exactly. It was the gateway drug. I was like, more than half the magazines that I had were retrofitted with the follower, and then all the other magazines that I purchased after that had the follower. Right. So I was willing to take a risk and play with them, and just watching the evolvement. And to this day, I'm like No apologies for this. My favorite PMag is the European PMags.
Oh yeah, the EMAG. I still have like ammo cans full of them loaded at the house.
Those are the ones that I like. I love all the other PMags, but those are my go-to. Those are the ones that are all in my go-to war bag. Just because they just like they have all the features that I want and nothing else that I don't. Yeah. It's perfect. So
I've moved on to the Gen M3 just because on the geometry is very similar, and the EMAG is a fantastically reliable magazine. Gen M3 is even more so. Not that you're going to run into that as a factor, right?
Slicing hairs.
So it's like
slicing hairs.
31,000 rounds, whatever.
It's kind of ridiculous.
It's gone to the silly point, but for sure.
So Magpul is continuing, and this is another thing too that I appreciate about you guys is you continue to innovate.
Try to.
And that's hard because you guys, you have to really dig deep in some cases, but you continue to do that with the product line. Like I've watched it. I've watched it from afar, and I've participated in it in some cases. And I what I use on for my gear needs has gone through not just product testing from the manufacturer side of the house, but my own testing and my own kind of assessment, if you will. Because I want to make sure that it's meeting my needs, and I want to be informed about my choices that I make. Like I have like a required list of needs, and as long as these products are meeting my needs, I'm good with it. But I don't just arbitrarily jump on bandwagons. Like that's one thing that I've always been I've always been pushed back against that. Like, okay, I get it. You're going to throw a lot of stuff at me. That's awesome. But, I want to make sure that your shit works. Yep. And if it does work, then great. Let's partner together. Let's do something. So, all right, let's start wrapping things up. I got one final question. What is the big takeaway you want the viewers and listeners to have from our chat?
So that's a tough one. I would say that there are 3 factors that I attribute my success to that are probably, worth hanging on to maybe for somebody else. And one is there's providence involved in everything, right?
Like
to some extent.
I like that.
So there is some inescapable avenue, I think, of just sometimes there's, whether you call it luck or whatever, there's an element to that, right?
Okay.
But the reality of the situation is sometimes perseverance and tenacity creates that.
Hell yeah. Hell to the yeah.
So that perseverance and tenacity, not taking no for an answer where it's applicable, and just not giving up on things. If that's what you want to do, do it. And the other side is being willing to take some chances. Right? So there's many of those points in my life, whether it's the decision to try to go to OCS, or to finally walk into the recruiter's office, or to say I wanted to be a fighter pilot, right? Yeah. Or to I'm going to take half my salary and go and try this Brownell thing for a while, and thousands of other decisions along the way, right?
Right.
Being willing to take a chance and having confidence that you can accomplish what you want to, and just moving forward with that perseverance and tenacity. Those are the 2 biggest factors, in addition to kind of the providence over which I have no control.
Yeah.
That I attribute any measure of success that I've achieved.
100%. Well, like without it sounding cliche, but risk taking is not without its risks. but that's also where the rewards come in. And I can remember as a young frogman, I became somewhat complacent. I had reached a pinnacle in my career, and I had accomplished a lot. I was very happy with where I was at, and I became a little complacent in many things, and I stopped taking those risks because I'd achieved all this. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to I don't want to try to reclimb this mountain that I just climbed. But I look back at that, and that was again one of those choices that I made that was a bad choice. Like the decision making that I made around that was maybe had the best interest of my future self in mind, but it definitely did not help the present self at all. Yeah. And so I find and it was towards the end of my career that I started to get back into taking those risks, to be in like I one might call it rebellious. Risk-taking, rebellious. I definitely was. I got back to my roots towards the end. I definitely stepped on a lot of toes there, So, but but that's who I am. And that was the thing, is that I felt more like there was a time period where I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. But then towards the end of that career, when I started taking those risks again, it felt more like me. And that's all that anybody can ever ask for, is just be comfortable with you and do you really well. Yep. So, the saying in our community is get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that means, and I try to impart that in my kids, that you need to take risks, you need to make mistakes, you need to fail. And I think, at a grainy level, the fear of failure also is something to confront. Like, that's the dragon that we all have to slay.
Absolutely.
And I can appreciate, like, it's tough to go back out there and slay another dragon, You're just like, I just want to relax. Can I just not have to be confronting everything all the time? But it's in our nature. And I feel like when you embrace that and just move forward with it, good things happen. Like you were saying, good things come to you.
You have to do things that scare you.
Ah, yes. Trying to live a bubble life is not it's not a rewarding life. It's not it may check a box, but you're missing out on so many things. And again, I found that out late in my career. I wish that I hadn't made that choice in the kind of like the third quarter of my career. All right. So it's this question, or it's not a question, this statement is kind of silly, but where can folks go to find out more about Magpul?
Magpul.com. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming as usual. And this SHOT Show will do the whole release thing. We've got a lot of really cool firearms products. We've got some other hard goods line expansion stuff coming.
Nice.
That's super crazy and exciting that we're really, really happy with and excited to show the world. So lots of stuff coming from Magpul. You can find that at magpul.com as well as on our Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, I know of an organization that'd be willing to kind of take some of that product in advance and do stuff with it. just in case you're wondering.
Oh, all right.
All right, folks. Well, that's a wrap. I want to thank Duane for coming on the show and spending time and talking to us. It was awesome. I really enjoyed this. This was everything I was expecting it to be. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Thanks for our support, our sponsors. I want to thank the men and women that are standing in the line right now. You can check out our previous podcast by visiting bulletproofworkshop.com. Learn more about me and training opportunities by visiting tridentconcepts.com. Until then, I'm Jeff Gonzales, and you're listening to the Bulletproof Workshop podcast. Take care and stay safe.
See ya. Adios.